if you would look then, I would say on trench maps in the very beginning of the war, you would find back that if you go a kilometer further at there, they had a farm which was given the name Essex Farm Dressing Station, hence the name Essex Farm. It was moved, let's say, this one was built early 1915 actually then, but was given the same name as the one a kilometer further there. So they used farms in the beginning of the war. Farms, you could say, had a building, a barn as well. The boy stops having to build one, so you could use it and treat the soldiers in there. The only thing is, of course, they did in the beginning of the war because they noticed straight away this was not such a good idea, because you have an easy spottable building, you could say, for your enemy. And enemies both were enemies, so they did it from both sides, where they attacked places like this at night if they discovered where they were. They also killed soldiers from each other as well, waiting wounded soldiers, and they also shelled places, which was even worse because then your doctors got wounded as well. So it's in 1915 that they realized that, let's say, a camouflage dressing station worked better, which made them then dig one I mean here, in the spoil of the canal. In a very primitive way, because there's a picture of this 1915 dressing station at the end on the board. So it's on the same spot, but then in 1917 Third Battle of Ypres came, which made them reinforce the existing one and enlarge it, and they used more concrete in 1917 than in the beginning of the war. So the concrete construction is from 1917. So what is now the idea of a place like this is that first of all you had to get the soldiers here before you could treat them here. So we talk about a kilometer, you could say, roughly. Between 15 and 17, so a kilometer, but you can read that it took in the worst conditions, let's say, more than 12-14 hours to move 500 meters for the stretchers, for the stretcher bearers, I mean, with the stretcher and the wounded soldier on there. They finally made it, and here then they had eventually to wait till the engineers, Royal Engineers, had repaired the bridge again for so many time, and then they finally made it across the canal. It is obviously known as well that the people cannot be blamed, but they have been carrying a dead body around for the last 6 hours, let's say. The dressing station had rows, which is quite horrible, but you had the dead row, not dead but not much point in treating, and then eventually the ones that still had a chance to survive. There's the people who ended up in a room like this, they would avoid operations, let's say, but they tried to rinse the wounds first here, which was not done, mostly not done with iodine. You can imagine they ran out of that stuff all the time. It is known that garlic water was then the most used alternative actually to rinse wounds. They stitched it roughly together, and that was the whole idea, and then the first dressing, and this all had to stop the bleeding for further transportation to the field hospitals where they could do proper operations, you could say. The diagnosis of a boy like this was written on a tag, and they hung that on the soldier, and the tagged one was brought to there. He had to wait again, then let's say till the night came, and then an ambulance, if he was lucky, brought him to Poperinge, because many of them ended up in one of the wooden lorries that we saw outside the museum there in the little shed. There's a I don't know what year, ambulance from the Red Cross. So there's no suspension on that thing, you could say. The road to Poperinge was not a road like we have nowadays, was covered with shell holes. It's 11 kilometers, and imagine that they also ran out of morphine as well, you could say. So it was very agonizing way, you could say, to get there.